Hello everybody, welcome to the Cold and Dark channel. My name is Jet Wildcat, and today we're going to be covering the NTSB's preliminary report into Southwest Airlines Flight 4805. This is a continuation of the previous video where we kind of went over the ATC tapes. Based on the information, this actually releases a whole lot of information into what kind of happened on this incident. So let's get started. So on June 25th, 2024 at 5:43 Eastern Daylight Time, Southwest Airlines Flight 4805, a Boeing 737-700, November 7861 Juliet, departed from a closed runway at Portland International Jetport, Portland, Maine. The flight continued without further incident to its intended destination, to the Baltimore-Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport, Baltimore, Maryland. The two flight crew members, 3 cabin crew members, and 131 passengers deplaned at the gate without any injuries. The flight was operated under 14 CFR Part 121, Scheduled Domestic Passenger Flight. The same day, the NTSB was notified by Southwest Airlines of the events, and in response began an incident investigation, as they will do. As part of the investigation, the following parties were named, so the FAA obviously was involved. Southwest, the Pilots Association for Southwest, so SWAPA, and the Boeing company were all involved, as well as NTSB specialists, including air traffic control, operations, and flight data recording. So a little history on the flight. According to Southwest Airlines, the incident flight's dispatch release, titled Release Number 1, indicated that the departure time for the flight was 5:40 local time. The release also indicated a 12-minute taxi out at Portland's and an arrival time of 7:15. They kind of put that in there, I think, to kind of highlight the fact that if they had departed right at 5:40, that they, with a 12-minute taxi time, would have gotten to the runway at about 5:52. By that point, that runway would have been open and the airplane would have been good to go on runway 29. But it appears that they either pushed early or were really quickly taxiing, because they ended up getting there at 43. As part of their pre-flight duties, the flight crew reviewed Southwest Airlines briefing electronic weather packet, which was generated at 4:46 local time. The packet contained in part the departure and destination weather, and also notices to our missions, or NOTAMs. There were 32 NOTAMs specifically for Portland, Maine, including a runway closure NOTAM until 5:45 on the event date. In addition, part of the weather packet included a contents page which included the message that all flight crews departing from Portland before 5:45 must call their dispatcher and receive a briefing from the chief pilot, who was on call about departing from runway 1836, as this was one of the shorter runways in Southwest's fleet, or Southwest systems. The flight crew did not see the content page, nor did they call for a briefing. So a review of the NOTAMs for Portland revealed that runway 1129 was closed at the time of the departure due to a construction activity on or near the runway. The runway closure NOTAM was in effect from June 19th to July 24th, and stipulated that the runway would be closed Monday through Friday from 10:30 to 5:45 local, and on Saturday and Sunday from midnight till 5:45. The incident flight occurred on a Tuesday, meaning that it was supposed to be closed till July 24th. Most airports, at least this is how we did it, it would show the runway closure map for the day that the closure started on. So at one of the airports that I worked at, if we closed the runway at 11:30 at night, we were technically the third shift of that day. So it was dated, or at least in our head, it was dated the 24th. So I'm wondering if that's kind of what happened, because it says it ends the day before the closure. Just something to kind of note there is that if it truly opened on the 24th, then the closure shouldn't have been there. But anyway, so according to the flight crew, they arrived to the flight on time within their blocked, uh, their show time. The captain, who was the pilot flying, began the pre-flight duties by reviewing the aircraft's logbook for open discrepancies, minimum equipment list items, and a maintenance release. The first officer conducted an exterior pre-flight duties and programmed the navigational equipment. Basically, that's going through the flows on the overhead, setting up the or the FMC or the FMS, depending on, and doing the pre-flight walk around, making sure there's nothing visible to the pilots that could be wrong with the airplane. No hydraulic fluid, no oil leaking, no significant damage to the aircraft, etc. The crew also used their respective iPads to set up five flight-related applications, including Jeppesen Flight Deck Pro, WSI, and Comply 365, which provides station-specific information. So your Jeppesen has your charts. I believe WSI shows the flight track, and those who actually use the system, please let me know if I'm correct on this. It's the system overlaid with weather and can tell you weather. And Comply 365, again, it provides station-specific information. The captain accessed the Comply 365 application and noted that Portland Tower would be closed until 5:45, as we discussed, or as is common with some of these smaller airports, that the tower is only open during a certain amount of times. Therefore, Boston ARTC, or Air Route, basically Boston Center, would need to be contacted on frequency 128.2 for their instrument departure or IFR clearance and void time. The application also indicates that the morning departure should expect runway 29. The captain stated that he briefed the information to the FO and then entered the departure, destination, and route into the flight management computer. The flight crew also reviewed NOTAMs and noted that runway 29 was closed on Saturdays and Sundays, so they're thinking, well, it doesn't apply to us until 5:45. The captain incorrectly assumed that any additional days on the runway closure would be in the same NOTAM. The flight crew members did not see the separate NOTAM addressing the runway closure on the other days of the week. The NOTAM was underneath another application. So kind of what it sounds like is he had this biases to say, well, and it's not a wrong assumption. A lot of airports will combine NOTAMs if they open or if they are at the same time. I will kind of go over NOTAMs. For me, the combined NOTAM tends to be a bit of an issue, especially in a dynamic airport world. I experienced this in my professional career, that the airport is a living, breathing organism. It changes as the night. So while it might be easy for smaller airports to put out just these blanket, hey, on these days, this is when it's scheduled to close. in real practical sense, it is, at least in my opinion, a benefit to put in the runway closures each day, because if, God forbid, something happens, if uh, the runway can't close until later, if you need to make an adjustment, if the closure doesn't happen at all, then you can just delete the NOTAM. Then you don't have a NOTAM sitting there taking up space, taking up, and not confusing pilots, because the NOTAMs are only as good as the information you put in them. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but that is why, at least in my opinion, if you have a runway closure marker for each day, or NOTAM for each day, then it's obviously going to populate. It's obviously going to populate into flight crews. There's not going to be this confusion of, I didn't see the closure NOTAM before. Because typically how these are run are the most up-to-date ones are going to be shown, or the most current, closest to the day that it is, are going to be shown. So whereas this one was released on the 19th, it's now the 25th. The weekend one is closer, so it's going to populate the weekend one before. It's going to show the runway closure because it's a lower number down below, and it's easily missed. Hopefully that makes sense as well. So, the FO stated before pushback they received performance weight and balance, or PWB, takeoff data via their air data system for runway 29. Normally, when a runway is closed, no takeoff data is received, only a message stating that it is unavailable due to a runway closure. The crew did not brief, nor are they required to brief, the frequencies they would utilize. When the flight was ready to push, the FO advised on the Unicom frequency, or Universal Communication Frequency, 122.9, that they would be pushing back on from Gate 4. They also advised on the Unicom frequency that they will be taxiing runway 29 for departure. The flight crew completed the briefing, all briefings and checklists, and the airplane pushed back from the gate normally. To these flight crew members, this was a normal day. This was a normal. I'll go over at the end. I think they were on the wrong frequency. Again, not assigning blame to the flight crew or not assigning blame to anybody. Just kind of explaining, that this frequency is not the frequency I believe they should have been on. But they did make calls, just not to the right people. The captain stated that the FO made multiple calls to Portland traffic in regards to their planned taxi route for runway 29. The FO stated to investigators that, while taxiing, he utilized the Unicom frequency to announce his intentions. He then, just before reaching the runway, contacted Boston Center and advised to them that they were number 1 for departure from runway 29. Boston Center gave them a clearance with instructions to climb on runway heading to 4,000 feet. The FO stated he again advised over Unicom that the aircraft would be turning onto runway 29 for departure. Both crew members indicated they saw a truck exit the runway while the flight was holding short of runway 29. Before applying power, they both confirmed the truck was clear of the runway, and they had watched it clear the runway, turned off the runway onto a taxiway, pulled into the terminal, and faced the runway. So again, they're not hearing the conversation in the previous video of because that was taken on CTAF frequency, which is typically the tower frequency. Again, I will go over at the end where I think maybe the miscommunication or whatever it was took place. But to them, this was business as usual. They didn't hear anybody. They didn't know that they were being followed. So in the air traffic control tapes, there was I believe, a Blue Streak or Republic chasing them, and they go straight. The other airplane turns, and I'm guessing that there was a conversation inside the cockpit of that RJ that was behind them. That was like, well, he's going out to 2.9. I'm hoping like, let's see what he does. The worst case that happens is we wait till tower opens and tower solves everything out. But what we don't want to do is, all right, I guess we're number one, apply power and have a collision at the cross. The airplane turned on runway 29, and the FO announced on Unicom that the plane would be departing runway 29. After a visual check of the runway, the flight crew verified the runway and that it was clear of all objects. The flight crew did not observe any equipment markings, visual runway closure lighted X designations, or other signs indicating that the runway was closed, and all equipment and people were clear of the runway. No other traffic or communications were heard on the Unicom frequency. The flight departed runway 29 and continued to PWI uneventfully. So, a little bit about the airport. So, as you can see, to them, the first time they knew something was wrong was when they got into the air, and you heard it on the tapes. Boston Center goes, Southwest 4805. You guys took off 29. Like, that was a closed runway, possible pilot deviation. That was the first time they probably knew something had happened, because the Swiss cheese model had lined in such a way that everything seemed business as usual. That's not a sentence you want to hear in aviation, but it's a reality. Is that to these pilots, it was first flight of the day. They're ready for, it might have been their go home day, and it turned into a normal takeoff run. 5-10 minutes down the line was actually an incident that they didn't know about. So luckily, nothing happened with this flight. Let's talk about the airport itself. So Portland Jetport is located 2 miles west of Portland, at an elevation of about 76 mean sea level MSL. The aircraft has two paved landing surfaces, runway 1129 and runway 1836. Runway 1129 is 7,200 feet long and 150 feet wide. So this runway is the runway typically used. Like obviously indicated, runway 1836 can be used, but most pilots, and commercial jets, if they have the option between choosing the 7,200-foot runway versus the slightly shorter runway, will typically choose the longer runway. So this is the runway typically used at Portland, Maine. The Portland Air Traffic Control Tower operates from 5:45 in the morning to 10 o'clock each day. At the time of the incident, the Air Traffic Control Tower was closed and did not provide service. However, two certified professional controllers, or CPCs, were in the tower, and one of them, or one CPC, was in the terminal radar approach controller, getting ready for the day. So in a case like this, they're getting everything set up, making sure all the screens are working properly, making sure they kind of can build a picture of what the airspace is doing. You got the radar controller about to open up Portland approach and getting everything settled down there. And so they may, and you heard it down there, that they did kind of hear what was happening, but legally because the tower is not open, they are not allowed to say anything, I believe, on frequency. The tower isn't open. They have no controlling power at that point until they open up the airspace and open up the tower every morning. The airport is equipped with 2 separate frequencies to which pilots could communicate when the tower is not open. These frequencies are listed as a Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, CTAF, and Unicom frequency. CTAF is the same as tower, so typically what will happen is they will monitor the common traffic frequency because, and especially that close to that tower being open, they can hear when the tower opens. So if they have any questions, if they have any issues, let's say they were going down the runway, it hits 45, they open. Typically, the tower will wait until that departure departs um, before making the call that it's open. I've personally been in the scenario where I was driving around the airport and was just kind of putting along, and I was on a taxiway, and I just heard, oh, this is blah 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 tower. Uh, Class D airspace is in effect. This tower's open. And I just called up. I said, tower, Ops 1. Hey, we're out here on Bravo. We'd like to go to spot 4. All right, continue via Bravo across, whatever. But it's a very easy transition once the tower opens. But you have to get it in your head that the tower is open, so you can't just do everything that you wanted to. So, and then investigative activities. The digital flight data recorder was removed from the Southwest airplane and shipped to the NTSB Vehicle Recorder Laboratory in Washington, D.C., where the data will be downloaded and analyzed. During the week of July 8th, 2024, the operations group interviewed the incident crew members and dispatchers, and this is where you're getting these reports, and the investigation continues. I don't think the investigation will last too much longer. I think they're probably pretty close to a final report. It's pretty clear as to kind of what happened. Um, and so this is a slide I put in here to kind of show the differences between Unicom and CTAF. So they are both radio frequencies or communication frequencies used by pilots at the airport, but they serve different purposes at times. Um, so Unicom frequency provides information and services to the pilots. So at one of the airports I worked at, the Unicom frequency was typically a north cargo and south cargo frequency. So we would as ops people monitor that frequency and not give clearances, but give advisories of hey, XYZ Airlines, you're going to base 6 at your own discretion. You could proceed there. We could give assignments, we just couldn't give clearances. And then sometimes you'd hear him over in the North Cargo area calling up, and we didn't really deal with that one. CTAF, however, is the frequency used by pilots to communicate with each other and coordinate their movement. So pilots can use CTAF to self-announce their intentions and avoid collisions. CTAF frequencies can be Unicom frequencies, FSS, tower, or multicom frequencies. So a good example of where a Unicom and a CTAF frequency are both is at an airport I flew into a lot, Valkyrie Airport. You would, on approach, or coming into the airport, you'd tune in 122.75, and you could get other by 3 clicks. You could ask the person on the ground, and you can make your announcements. Hey, we're 10 miles out. Whereas at another airport that I'm familiar with, a New Haven airport, your CTAF frequency is your tower frequency. So you're going to be talking on 124.8, and that's what everybody else is going to be talking on. Ops vehicles, fire, any FBO traffic going, we're on the movement area, stuff like that. You're going to be on 124.8. The Unicom frequency allows you to, again, talk to the FBO to like coordinate with them. So, like I said at the beginning, or before I got on this rant about CTEF and Unicom, I don't think this investigation is going to take much longer. I think it's pretty pretty well known what happened. I also don't think these pilots will lose their job. I think they may, if they haven't already, have a conversation with the chief pilot, obviously, and maybe it helps change a procedure where Southwest can go to Portland and say, hey, to prevent something like this shows that this is a possibility. Why don't you guys issue runway closure notams for each individual night so that this doesn't happen? It appears, as of August 10th, that Southwest has bumped the flight up to a departure of 6 o'clock. I don't know if that was a planned or if it was a result of this incident, basically saying, hey, all right, we'll just fly when the power's up. But it appears that it leaves at like 6 o'clock, gets into Baltimore at like 8 or 7:30, 8 o'clock. So at least on the onset, it looks like this is not going to happen again. Feel free to comment. Feel free to comment down below your opinions. The point of this site or this channel is to induce conversation, to talk about the industry, to talk about where we can make it safer. And it can't just be a one-sided conversation. I want to hear comments like I heard on a previous video. If there's any videos you want me to cover, or any incidents you want me to cover, also put that down below. Do me a favor, subscribe, like, and comment below so we can boost this page. If you like what you hear, please let me know. I do this for y'all, and I do this because I like talking about aviation, but I'm only going to do it if people actually are listening. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment down below what you want to hear next from the Cold and Dark channel. My name is Joe Walker. We are signing off for now. Have a good